complexity deals with the different dimensions of collaboration between organizations. What makes such collaboration challenging, and how different types of misunderstandings may arise. Every organization has its own understandings of how reality is connected and what leads to desired results. So key parts of the problems area is diversity of objects, as well as the constant changes such as requirements and expectation that must be met. Collaborative challenges can be linked to geographical, cognitive, organizational, and structural distances between the organizations. Geographical distances is about different locations for collaboration. Cognitive distances is about the differences in perspective, knowledge base, culture, etc. And about how different actors view the world differently. Furthermore, one can encounter organizational distances, differences in organization, processes, regulations, and hierarchy, which make the interaction more difficult. Related to this, one can meet structural distances, where different actors are involved in different systems, characterized by different asymmetry and power differences. Co-generative learning is focused on how organizational development can be implemented in the way that transcends categories such as top-down and bottom-up, and which is based on the democratic principle and broad participation. The process is no longer characterized by external experts changing the organization, but how experts from outside and practitioners from inside together can build new knowledge and new practices. The key is that across borders, one can define both the starting point and the implementation for development in changing work. I'm so sorry. Co-generative learning is shortly about external experts meeting participants and practitioners and creating spaces for cooperative definitions of problems. So, and this we can see this in relation to Paulo Freire's dialogical pedagogic. He describes the traditional teacher-student's relationship like this. The teacher's task is to fill the student with content of his narration, contents which are detached from reality, disconnected from the totality of engendered them, and could give them a significance. Freire represents a break with the traditional teacher-student relationship. In his pedagogy, on the other hand, he involves a far more dialogical role as teachers. He sees teachers and students in dialogue. They learn from each other and emphasizes that teaching is about mutual learning, dialogue instead of narrative, and that only dialogue is capable of generating critical thinking. So, the study we conducted a qualitative study with focus group interviews with a strategic selection of informants from NAV, the career centers, who at various levels have been involved in the implementation process of this project and the 4 sub-projects. In addition, we interviewed the researchers that were involved, and the focus group interviews are both effective and useful for elucidating many issues within different problem areas. The discussions form a data production that produces empirical data at the group level on the issue determined by the researcher. The purpose of the interviews is to start provide information on how the informants perceive and understand their situation, their experience, and their experiences related to the research questions. And when we go to the results, we see that all the sub-projects have faced challenges related to inter-organizational complexity. The meeting between different institutions with different conditions, different laws, different languages, different understandings of goals, and this becomes more complicated when new players are joined, as happened in all 4 projects. NAV and career centers, and in addition, the university researchers that were facilitating the projects are obviously in different worlds along many dimensions. And this has led to various challenges that have been about different regulation, different focus, different competences, different knowledge base for career guidance, and so on. In part, this has been about real differences. Other time, it has been about notions, different notions, and even prejudice of the other partners in the collaboration. This inequality are not only negative. In many ways, it is these differences that has formed the basis of a project that should develop and strengthen the collaboration between the different partners. The fact that there are different institutions that complement each other and with competence and approach is the reason why collaboration can have a positive function for the users. Because the collaboration partners view the world differently, cooperation can also provide various constructive solutions related to the challenges the users face. We believe that the project has met several of the inter-organizational distances we have previously pointed out. In terms of organization, law, and regulation, the 2 organizations are clearly different from each other. We see geographical, cognitive, organizational, and structural distances between the organizations. And in particular, one informants have been concerned that many who work in the 2 organizations have a clear notion that they have different goals. NAV wants people back to work quickly, while the career centers will allow people to dream of possibilities and different possible futures, to explore their own opportunities and ambitions on a slightly deeper level. This may not always correspond with the efficiency that NAV strives for. This is probably partly about understanding each other just as much as reality. Reality is that the 2 are more similar in their approaches than the pictures they may have of each other. This leads to for now, premature analysis, where we see that there is a possibility for several dimensions for co-creation at the same time. co-creation between NAV and Career Center, and also between the practitioners and the guidance seeker. Co-generated career guidance can occur when practitioners from different organizations together with the guidance seeker in dialogue create career guidance. There is a clear discrepancy in both the knowledge base and target structure between the institutions. On most parameters, NAV and career centers were different. NAV is a large and old organization, while the career center is a relatively recent construction and also a much smaller organization. They differ from one each other in terms of organization, in terms of staffing, regulations, finances, budgetary processes, and reward structures. They are subject to different ministries and are regulated by different laws and regulations. Furthermore, they are not co-located. In some cases, they may be geographical distances between the NAV office and the career center when it comes to cross-sectoral work, obstacles and distances of both cognitive and organizational and structural nature. All that we have previously described as inter-organizational distances was present when NAV and career centers and others were to cooperate. A condition for success and for further future cooperation will be, among other things, to deliver short-term results, to make people see that this means results for the partners now and not in a diffuse future. Partners need to see that it can help the individual professional to do the job she is going to do now, that it will be not something extra, something outside, which is imposed by some stupid boss who does not understand what you are up to at the everyday life. The work must be able to provide credible answers to the eternal questions of how does the job one must already do better? What's in it for me? For all the participating partners. If the practitioner does not see the gain, the work is in great danger. Co-generative career guidance is one way to ensure better understanding and collaboration between the involved organizations, because it helps to build a common understanding of the organization's goal and what they can contribute with across the borders. The role of the university researchers as the external experts in the development will be particularly important to grasp. Are they able to enter the process of co-generative learning? So these are my references. And then I'll just say thank you and stop sharing. Yes, how do I do that? Yeah, the more button. Make host, yes. So, yeah.
That's me.
So. Yes.
Thank you. Lovely. Before I do, I just wanted to say thank you so much, Ida, and I just wanted to show you a round of applause. One of those things that we seem to be missing from this sort of virtual environment, but that was a brilliant presentation, and thank you so much for sharing that with us. Also, I don't know if we've got time for any questions anyone might have had.
Yeah. Is there any questions? Yeah. Caroline, did we meet at the ECADOC?
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, we did.
Thank you. Thank you so much, because it's so interesting to see how collaboration is a thing we never think about in different institutional organizations, and it's not natural. We have to create it. We have to nudge it. And that is very interesting to see. We can have better understanding of that process when we are different and specific organization in the same goals. So thank you very much.
Yeah, I so agree. Yeah.
Okay, I'm just going to load my slides.
Yeah. Then I'll mute myself.
Has this worked? And can you see me and hear me? This is the first time I've tried to share them in this way, but
I can see you and hear you.
Thank you so much.
Yes.
That's brilliant. So thank you so much again. And yeah, thanks all for being here. And it's so lovely to be here presenting to you all. And thank you so much for everything. I'm just so excited to be here. And it's just been such a strange time over the pandemic, but it's really nice to still feel part of this international conference. This is the first time I've ever been to IAVG. So yeah, I'm very excited to be here. So hello everybody, my name is Róisín Reid. I am a senior teaching fellow at the University of Warwick, and I'm here today on behalf of my colleague, Dr. Boga Kalestin as well. And basically we're here to talk about a design thinking approach to engaging with employability and careers education in higher education, specifically at Warwick. So I just wanted to tell you a little bit about an intervention that we used and kind of a little bit about the background about why we used it and what we were trying to achieve. So yeah, so I'll carry on and get on to the main bit of the slides. So basically, we did an intervention in June and July of this year where we wanted to try to break down institutional dialogue relating to employability. And basically, we found that there are some dominant master narratives, and we wanted to try to break those down in an interdisciplinary way that framed co-creation at the heart. So we tried design thinking as an approach to enable some of that institutional discussion. So I'll tell you a little bit more about the background of the project and the methods that we approached in terms of data analysis, and then findings and discussion, and hopefully leave some time for questions at the end. Just a couple of things to say about Warwick University before I begin. So Warwick University, it's actually in Coventry, which is in the middle of the UK. It's a relatively new university. It's came about 40 years ago. We have 27,000 students, so it's an international university. 2/3 are undergraduate, and 2/3 roughly UK students, with the other half from Europe and a third from Europe and international students. Most of them are full-time. The university are very proud of the fact that there are these accolades in the league tables, but I think the reason I've mentioned the last one is that the university are quite proud of the fact that we're the 6th most targeted university by employers. And what that actually means is that the employers are on campus quite a lot. During the pandemic, the employers have been sort of contacting our students quite a lot. And so this all plays into the narrative of employability at Warwick. Let me move on. So sort of to situate this more generally, employability in higher education is a problematic term, and it is by nature political. We've got the tensions there of consumerist expectations of student engagement within sort of a neoliberalist society set against the value of education. And so career guidance practitioners are often expected to weigh into this critical discourse, and yet sometimes we feel conflicted due to the competing policy aims that we have. For example, in the UK, universities are measured by graduate outcomes, so how well are they doing in getting jobs? And as a result, the narrative can build up and get all sort of mixed up together. So in terms of from the students' point of view, they see things as very sort of misrepresented, they don't know where they fit in, and it can be very misunderstood. As well as that, in the UK, the financial funding models have changed over the last decade or so. Student fees used to be £1,000 a year, and within the space of 6 short years, that's changed to over £9,000. So for the student, that's a considerable amount more debt than they were used to. And the way that the funding models have changed have meant that the government are now using lots of metrics to rank universities on their performance after graduation. And so we were interested actually in how the students are sort of internalising all of these messages. So there seem to be all of these policy debates and sort of bigger picture things that come through the media. And then the students are internalising this as, well, hold on, you're talking about me and my career here. We've kind of got academics who've argued that actually that's only a very small picture of the whole thing of graduate preparedness, and that I suppose there does seem to be a lot of conflict around whose responsibility it actually is to prepare students, with some colleagues who are very keen to embed employability within their courses, and some who are very reticent for lots of reasons that we'll probably come on to a little bit later. So myself and Bo at the University of Warwick are leaders of our Employability Learning Circle, where we get together and talk about these issues more broadly. And what we wanted to do is start to unpick some of these things together across the institution with students, with all of the different staff stakeholders, to start to address how employability itself can be so poorly defined. So we came up with the Warwick Employability Challenge. It's a very cheesy name, but we wanted to bust open the master narrative and discourse. And we wanted to give students a central voice rather than being consulted or sort of down the lower end of the student engagement hierarchy. We wanted to bring them in as partners. And the premise was simple of this challenge. We wanted to use the design thinking methodology to enable all of the students and staff members to question the dominant narratives within small interdisciplinary teams, to scope out some of the problems of employability. And despite the array of initiatives that there have been at Warwick, there has been to date a lack of deep engagement, I would say, across the whole institution. And there does seem to be a bit of a disconnect between individual departments, academic departments, or professional services. And so we wanted to bring everyone together to start these dialogues. So the aim of this project was, we wanted to just begin by conceptualizing what are the problems. So we called them problem representations. So what are the problem representations of the narratives of employability at Warwick? So what was the challenge then? So it had 3 parts to it. So we had interdisciplinary teams, which were formed of students, both undergraduate and postgraduate, staff members who are academic from all of the 33 different departments across the university, professional services colleagues. So we had good representation from all of the careers teams. We had representation from other teams that were like really brought so much energy and like knowledge to the teams. So for example, regional development, people who worked directly with employers, the alumni development team. So really got everyone across the institution together. And then we put everyone into teams to undertake these design thinking workshops. And I can tell you a little bit more about what we did there. So we explored employability from a range of stakeholder perspectives. Then we gave them a task to work together to create problem representations. So after 3 weeks, we all got together in this institutional showcase, and the teams presented their problem representations. So for those of you who are less familiar with design thinking, before working with Bo, so my colleague Bo is an expert in design thinking. I knew very little about it, but essentially design thinking is an iterative process by which we can seek to understand, so that it's quite a marketing, it comes from marketing. So they talk about the end user, but essentially we're trying to identify alternative strategies to solutions that might not normally be instantly apparent. And it has a lot of similarity to techniques that we use as guidance practitioners. So there is a focus on empathy and questioning skills, and it's all about sort of working, trying to explore different perspectives through use of questioning and collaboration. So we found quite a good fit there. Design thinking itself has 5 steps. Excuse me, sorry. And these are empathy, defining, ideating, prototyping and testing. And in the introductory workshops, we were able to, within teams, they were able to empathize and refine, talk about like being able to understand each other's perspective and really question why have these narratives come to exist? How did these problems come about? And then together they were able to work towards ideating, so being able to start to think of solutions. And then the task that we sent them to go away with was to begin to think, to prototype and test. So basically, so we had all teams submitted a problem representation, and what we decided to do to sort of generate the institutional learning from this was to bring all of the data together that we had. We had ethical approval to analyse the data from the workshops, all of the written data and the problem representations, and together we conducted a thematic analysis using Braun and Clark's 6-point framework. Similar to Ida, this is a working process, so this is very much where we're at the moment with our findings, but I'd kind of like to share what we have with you today. So in terms of from the teams went away, they worked so well together and came up with these problem representations. So we pulled all of that institutional learning from all of the diverse different departments together. And together we've been able to identify these themes. So firstly, one of the narratives that seem to emerge is that there seemed to be a student deficit. So it seemed to be that the narrative was saying that students lacked employability skills. Secondly, there is this narrative we couldn't get away from, where neoliberalism was the dominant paradigm, and the assumption that was made in all of the policy statements, narratives, messages that came through students were that university must lead to work. And we, through the design thinking process, began to question this, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that in a moment. And then in terms of responsibility, there seemed to be a lack of clarity around language, what does employability mean, but also behind that, whose responsibility is it, and what does this mean for students? So I'll take you through each of those now. So firstly, students were perceived as having a skills deficit. We kind of reviewed the presumptions that underlie this narrative, and it's clear that the university itself was guilty of positioning students as the people who were responsible, that employability and the act of being prepared for work is something that they must take charge of. However, for students, this was internalized as something that was inherently stressful, that they felt a burden of worry and stress that came with this additional responsibility. The students who took part in the workshops discussed feeling that they had this sort of deficit where as the time progressed, they were expected to have done all of these things, ticked all these boxes, and they were using words like overwhelmed, anxious, burdened, stressed, or poor mental health was used. And we examined the rhetoric used by the institution in their employability strategy, and it uses words very much like, we will ensure that our students understand the importance of taking responsibility for the development of their employability. So that was very much framed towards students. But not only does this sort of directing of responsibility towards the individuals shift the onus away from the institution, it assumes that all students have an equal opportunities to be able to do this, when in fact we know that opportunity structures are such that there are so many different factors that that factor into the creation, and this reproduces in inequalities. For example, students from lower socioeconomic backgrounds might not have the social and cultural capital that other peers have, and that provides a disadvantage. And there seemed to be a silence within that narrative. So, and then the next finding was relating to neoliberalism, which seemed to be completely unquestioned in the dominant narratives. And it seemed to be the messages that students were getting from all angles, be it their parents, their peers, their teachers, was that they need to engage in work. And that's something that, you know, the purpose of university is there to take them to work, rather than actually, for some academics who are in the teams, it emerged quite strongly that, well, actually, we haven't consented to this, we haven't consented to the marketisation of universities, and actually we don't believe that that's the case. And that in turn begins to contribute to the narrative becoming really unclear for students as to, you know, why are they here and what are they supposed to be doing. And I suppose there is an element that, again, students have felt that a sense of threat, that, I don't know, that university is some sort of conveyor belt that they are on, that they must be doing all these things to progress towards work. The messages that we're getting from employers were talking about fitting in and the best talent. And for some students, this is very isolating, and they don't want to be part of this sort of, this mode. And also it was kind of framed that this is very, that the whole process is about competition. So again, internalizing that for individual students, they felt inadequate, and they felt almost disengaged from engaging in employability as a learning process, because they felt like they were supposed to be something that they weren't. So that's, and then the final one, which I've kind of touched on already, is that there seemed to be this disagreement on whose responsibility it is to help students prepare for what comes after university. And there was kind of essential, like a sense that the individual has to be this, fit into this mold, that they had to undertake preparation for certain jobs. There was a lot that came through relating to the policy, the wider policy discourse and expectations that the government place on universities, that again, universities are sort of powerless to sort of rebut, but then I suppose, are they? I think the one thing that came through the narratives that struck us is that, again, all of this kind of can perpetuate inequalities, and we were kind of looking at this from a social justice angle, and that actually by leaving all of these narratives unquestioned, it's sort of, it does that, it reproduces, the system reproduces exactly the same. And so in terms of our conclusions so far, I suppose the Warwick Employability Challenge was actually so useful to be able to start some of these dialogues all together with everyone, and students felt empowered to, because the design thinking process valued everyone equally. They felt that their voice was sort of valued within this, and that they were able to start to question some of these narratives. So we found that design thinking, it's not something that I would have ever considered putting in a career education process before, but now I would. As a process, it was really useful, enabling sort of everyone's voice to be valued. We also, I forgot to mention this earlier, we had student facilitators who led the workshops. So again, it enabled students to feel empowered because students were leading the workshops. So it really was valuable from an interdisciplinary, and we were able to sort of start the process together of being able to take down these master narratives. I suppose the future is that now we've got these teams who are beginning to prototype and test some ideas. So I think in the future we'd like to revisit, where this takes us sort of as a learning institution. Excuse me, sorry. So that was all I had for today, but I just wanted to say thank you for listening, and I've got some time for questions. I'll also post the link to the chat of the website where you can go and have a look at some of the problem representations that were submitted. I've put them all on the website, and I can share these afterwards. Thank you. So if I stop sharing, I've got the references there. There we go. Fantastic.
Thank you very much, Emily. Thank you and congratulations. We have recently published an article in which we describe a process of co-creation of challenges and guidance proposals in the framework of vocational education and training. And we have based our work precisely on critical pedagogy approaches, Paulo Freire, and we have taken elements from design thinking. So we think that we have a work that join the two papers that you have presented. And we have in this work, we have elaborate proposals, work carried out jointly between the educational and labor administrations, students, teachers, counselors, and companies. And it has been very interesting to see that we are working in areas with a lot of common ground. Also, we use design thinking as a teaching methodology with our students that are preparing to be guidance counselors, so that they use it to co-create guidance program and actions. So it has been very very pretty and great to listen to you and how you work with design thinking and with your students. So thank you very much and congratulations.
Brilliant. Thank you so much. But I'm so keen to hear more from you about what you're doing. So very excited about that. Thank you. I do think there is something about just getting everyone together and everyone being equal at the table as a process.
Yes. I think we can post and now we have your address in order to get in touch. I think
that would be wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Emily, thank you very much for your presentation. And I do have a question. Can you maybe show us some of the solutions that were developed in the different groups, or just describe them a little bit?
Yeah. So I'll put the link in the chat in a moment. Okay. They're all on the website. Some of them, yeah, I think at the moment we're not in the stage of having fully fledged solutions so much as really good understanding of what the problems are. And I think some of them were, some of it is about just defining employability in new ways that make sense for everyone, that everyone can, so students at any stage can engage in what we're talking about. So I'm just trying to think off the top of my head. Chemistry department were the winners of the process. I think the easiest thing is if I can show you the link and let you explore it. But yeah, it was just so interesting to see all of the different perspectives come through. I think one of the things that surprised me the most was having people engage from, for example, regional development teams or alumni engagement teams, where we don't normally see them, we don't normally work with them as colleagues across the university, but actually they brought so much expertise to the table. It was really useful. So yeah, but I'll share the link in the chat.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Brilliant. So am I handing over now? Soledad, are you next? And Celia. Oh, lovely.
Okay, thank you, Emily. So, good afternoon, everybody. First, I would like to thank the organization of the Congress for allowing us to participate in this meeting and meet you all today. Our paper is entitled The Potential Use of Collaborative Ethnography for Childhood Career Development Research. So, this contribution is part of the literacy research team. We are members of the University of Seville, specifically of the School of Education. And our paper is divided into 5 parts. The first one is a general introduction to our research. The second part is the description of the methodology. The third is related to action incorporated in my MAP program. The fourth part is the result. And finally, we present our conclusions. The research was divided into several phases, which, after a first analysis of needs, completed a recursive cycle of planning, intervention, observation, and reflection. During this cycle, the research we planned was subjected to a monthly and quarterly analysis, and it was reviewed by the people in charge of the research process. The MyMap program was developed as a part of this research and its main objective was to help students develop personal and social skills related to career exploration, socio-emotional and career learning. A career is, for the European Lifelong Guidance Policy Network, established that the interaction of work roles and other life roles over a person's lifespan, including how they balance paid and unpaid work, and their involvement in learning and education. These roles include those of child, student, citizen, work, and so on. A career is configured through the interaction between individual characteristics, for example, aspiration, cognitive and behavioral skill, and life context, for example, family, school, friends, community, and country historical times. Also, the European Lifelong Guidance Policy Network defines career development as the lifelong process of managing learning, work, leisure, and transition in order to move toward a personality determined and involved future. Career is constructed from early childhood through a process in which individuals build themselves through language and social interaction. In this paper, we adopt a systemic approach to the concept of career development by McMahon and Patton, which is considered to be a dynamic process of influence from the different systems to which the child belongs. The interpersonal system, gender, age, beliefs, interests, values, role, etc. The social system, family, peers, media, etc. And the macrosocial system, political decision, historical trends, etc. Opportunity and change also represent a part of this system of influence. This approach therefore establishes an interactive link between all systems, as well as a recursive relationship between past, present, and future. So, from this standpoint, career exploration is viewed as a process of gaining understanding about oneself and the labor world, as well as of how self-environments may interact to produce desirable outcomes. The self and environment exploration can be seen as two aspects of a single process in which attitude, cognition, behaviors, and emotions interact. The cognitive component concerns the knowledge children have acquired about themselves and their educational and social world. The affective component refers to the feelings about the insights that emerge during the career exploration process. Career exploration is a key process in career development learning through which children can imagine and construct possible futures which are consistent with their community. The formation of critical beliefs and the expectations that shape their career development begins between the age of 6 to 10 age. This period is also important for the socio-emotional development. Literature recognizes the role of emotion in career development. Emotions play an important role in career development, and children require her to co-construct the meaning of their emotional experiences. So in the collaborative ethnography, the focus is not only on exploratory behaviors, but on the subjective and emotional aspect of exploration. It is a collaborative modality of intervention, research, and learning process. Collaborative ethnography activity in this research propose to the children and the counselor situation in which they must co-construct a story. The integration of visual and artist methodology, such as those used in this work, favors the involvement of a student in the process. The use encourage children to reflect and express who they are becoming through the construction of meaning and critical consensusness. In these ways, children act as active agents who can construct their own narrative of their life themes, and that derive from the subjective experience of their own career. So our objectives were, in the first place, to explore the possibility of the collaborative ethnography in the study of career exploration as social and emotional learning, and in the second place, identify the social system factors that influence career construction of children in low-income contexts and the resulting emotion. Our methodology. This research project is focused on the first cycle of primary education, 6 to 8 years old, signing in is a particularly vulnerable period due to the transition the student experiences. The school in which the research carried out is an urban context of social exclusion. The participants selected for this research have the following characteristics: 68% male and 32% female. 9 countries: Spain, Italy, Venezuela, Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, Morocco, and Senegal. 72% migrants or from migrant family. 70% of the family have precarious employment, and 2 girls is in foster care due to family neglect. The information collection procedures we use were those of collaborative ethnography, like structured interview, participant observation, document analysis, student production, diverse between teachers and researchers, photo taking, etc. So this research followed the internal regulation for social science required by the Ethical Committee for Experimentation with the University of Seville. The action included in my MAP program were, in the first place, my traveling backpack. The incorporation of this artifact in the teaching learning process allowed us to create bridges that connected the children's home with the school. This traveling backpack became the object that helped us gather information and materials that are relevant to the career exploration process. It also serves to involve family in the research process. Second, photo language. This action uses evocation through photographs as a tool for pupils to reflect on their present as a student and on their expectation for the future. The aim was to make a student aware of the importance of the present-future relationships. Third, my silhouettes. The purpose of this action was for participants to spend time thinking about themselves to later present themselves to the rest of their peers, specifically their psychological and personal traits. Secondly, it was intended that through the their public presentation of their expectation and interest, they would concretize some goals in front of others. And finally, my story in photographs. The photobiography facilitates the awareness of the different milestones, moments, and significant people in children's life trajectories. It's also made it possible to observe the evolution they have gone through, as well as the significant people and place in their lives. On the other hand, it's allowed the children to identify the place that they occupy in the different systems they are part. For example, family, school, virtual spaces, etc. Now my colleague Soledad presents the result. No.
Yes, children have identified the social factors that influence their career development, family, friends, and school, through the career exploration process, which impacts their social and emotional learning. These results have been the product of a qualitative career assessment process using a collaborative methodology in which the voices of the children were the focus. The systemic perspective outlined in the introduction of this paper made by Celia was considered in the analysis of the results, in which the co-analysis was the key element. The career assessment and exploration process were developed, made it easier for the children to express and to be conscious of their situation. All the children showed awareness of their situation of poverty and of the assumption that this situation will always accompany them. This is an aspect that has an impact on their aspirations in two senses: the acceptance and lack of aspiration, and aspiration of social mobility. In general terms, talking about family is a source of satisfaction and joy for children. They refer to the moments they live beyond the physical temporal limits of their household. For example, here I'm happy with my grandparents and my cousins, pointing to a drawing he has made depicting his family living in Africa. All of them related situations that produce pleasure and well-being. For example, Anna said, "This was for my neighborhood when my mother taught me to stake." It can also be seen how family acts as a model for the transmission of gender roles. An important part of the children's narratives shows stereotypied roles and behaviors. The children's verbal discourse shows a clear awareness of the biological differences between men and women, as well as of their roles in society and their expectations and functions. Some comments from the children were, for instance, on weekends, I am with my father in the park playing soccer. My mother is not here because she has to work at home. Grandma is one who makes the food, sets the table and cleans everything. Grandpa just sleeps and watches TV all the time and yells if we bother him. My sister helps mom and prepares the table for when dad and I arrive. The analysis of the results shows, in relation to a school, that it is considered by the teachers and the students themselves as a space of homogenization. The school space helps them to escape from the adult responsibility that they assume at home from an early age. For instance, they cook alone, they take care of their younger siblings, they do the shopping, etc. The children see school as something that is different from them, but at the same time, they consider it is a space of the security and tranquility where they have the support of of teachers and peers. Another results in relation to social networks are says that social networks are a space of free interaction and escape for these children. We must consider that their model of spatial interaction is very limited, and it is largely limited to their neighborhood. This means that any extension of this space produces emotions and astonishment and exceptionality. Some contributions from the participants are: I saw in my grandmother's cell phone a huge park for children. There was even a swimming pool. Well, I saw the beach on my mother's Facebook, and there were jellyfish. They were big and very blue, from Anna. And Javier says, a girl was riding with her mother on a plane to go far away. The co-analysis sessions held with the participants show how social networks are for them an opportunity to make friends, to travel, to visit their families, but above all, an opportunity to diffuse the situation of social exclusion and marginalization that they suffer in most cases. The most common socialization channels are TikTok, YouTube, and WhatsApp. For example, Rocío said, in TikTok, I am like a princess, super pretty because I have filters. And Carmen says, well, my friend has put me in a group of neighbors and they send us songs by WhatsApp. It's super fun. Immersion in cyberspace generates very positive emotions for them, and they have the possibility of satiating with what their needs. In conclusion, evidence suggests that interventions that deeply engage children in meaningful explorations of themselves and their possible futures positively affect their performance, as said by Lapan et al. In 2017. Career exploration has been shown to be crucial to foster children's commitment and involvement in school and to facilitate their comprehensive development. Some studies, as Pule et al., show how the use of exploratory methodologies favors in children the emergence of a better understanding of themselves and has a positive impact on adaptation, performance, and academic persistence. These exploration processes must consider the systemic nature of career construction, which is not only based on aspirations and personal skills, and it is influenced by the vital context in which they develop. To strengthen them, it is necessary to develop intentional actions for schools with person-in-context approaches in which greater attention is paid to emotions, reflexivity, and collaboration between teachers, counselors, and different stakeholders, especially the family, maybe as we have seen in the other papers. The work carried out by our research team has proven that the use of creative career exploration and assessment tools can help facilitate the inclusion of this type of learning in schools located in low-income contexts. This type of tools allow children from low-income contexts to reflect on their own experiences when interacting with their environment context, as well as on the emotions that are generated by the exploration process itself, regardless of their age and cultural aspects. This can be done using not only verbal forms of communication, but also visual ones, which makes the connection with their needs more effective. For instance, with the prototypes as in design thinking. Through the creative procedures of career assessment and exploration, a safe and transformative environment can be offered to children to help them give meaning to the emotional experiences they have lived through, as our results have shown. Here we leave you the complete publication where all the results of this research are collected. The authors are both Celia and me, and 2 teachers from the school. And thank you for your attention. And we are disposable for your answers and comments. Thank you very much.
Once again, I feel the need to give you a round of applause. Congratulations. I thought that was really brilliant. Thank you.
That if there are no questions or comments, we can close the session. Yes. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.